Some people become louder when they are hurt. They argue, they demand answers, they say exactly what they are feeling. But others do something completely different. They go quiet. They stop responding, look away, and offer the same two words. I'm fine. From the outside, that silence can feel cold. It can look like avoidance, punishment, or emotional distance. But beneath the surface, something far more complicated may be happening. Their mind may be racing. Their emotions may be colliding. And even though they have 1,000 things they want to say, their brain cannot organize a single sentence. So why does emotional pain make certain people shut down? And more importantly, how can you reach someone in that state without pushing them even further away? To understand their silence, we first have to stop treating it as emptiness. Because silence is often where the loudest battles are happening. Main part, silence is not always a decision. One of the biggest mistakes we make is assuming that people consciously choose how they react during conflict. We imagine they have two clear options: speak honestly or refuse to communicate. But intense emotional reactions are not always controlled by conscious thought. When the brain senses danger, the autonomic nervous system can react before the person has time to decide what they want to do. And emotional danger can feel just as real to the nervous system as physical danger. A painful accusation, a raised voice, the fear of rejection, or the feeling of being misunderstood can trigger a powerful survival response. At first, a person may still be able to connect. They can explain what hurt them, listen to the other person, and search for a solution. If the pressure increases, the body may shift into fight or flight. The heart beats faster, the muscles tighten. The person may raise their voice, defend themselves, leave the room, or desperately try to prove their point. But when the emotional pressure becomes overwhelming, another response can appear: shutdown. One framework often used to explain this reaction is polyvagal theory, developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. It describes how the nervous system may move from social connection into defense and, under extreme stress, into a freeze-like state. Think of it like an electrical system carrying more power than it can safely handle. To prevent greater damage, the system shuts down. That is what emotional silence can look like. The person may appear still, distant, or strangely calm, but internally, their body is trying to reduce an unbearable amount of stress. Their thinking becomes less flexible, their ability to organize language weakens. They may know that something hurts without being able to explain exactly why. The words are somewhere inside them. They simply cannot reach them yet. This is why demanding an immediate explanation rarely works. Asking, "Why won't you say anything?" may sound reasonable to you. To someone who is already overwhelmed, it can feel like another threat their nervous system must survive. They are not necessarily refusing to communicate. They may be temporarily unable to communicate in the way you expect. At that moment, most of their emotional energy is being used for one purpose: keeping themselves from falling apart. Where this pattern begins, people rarely develop this response for no reason. For some, silence was learned during childhood. For others, it appeared after years of being misunderstood or emotionally attacked. And for some people, quiet processing is simply the most natural way their mind works. There are three common paths that can lead to this pattern. The first path: childhood emotional wounds. Children do not naturally hide every emotion. When they are frightened, they reach for safety. When they are sad, they cry. When they are angry, they protest. Emotional expression begins as an instinct. But children quickly learn which emotions are accepted and which ones create danger. Attachment theory, associated with psychologist John Bowlby, explores how early relationships with caregivers can shape the way people handle closeness, fear, and emotional pain later in life. Imagine a child who repeatedly hears things like, "Stop crying," "You're being dramatic," "Go away until you calm down," "Your feelings aren't a big deal." Perhaps anger is punished. Perhaps sadness is ignored. Perhaps asking for comfort leads to rejection instead of care. Over time, the child may form a painful internal rule. Showing emotion makes people leave. Vulnerability becomes connected with shame, punishment, or abandonment. So the child adapts. They stop asking. They hide their tears. They learn to experience pain privately because privacy feels safer than rejection. That strategy may protect them when they are young. But years later, the same survival pattern can reappear inside adult relationships. A disagreement happens. Someone raises their voice. The person suddenly feels small, trapped, and unable to speak. Their adult mind may know that the current situation is different. Their nervous system may not. It recognizes the emotional atmosphere and activates an old solution. Disappear before the pain becomes worse. The second path, relationships where words became weapons. Some people were once open communicators. They explained their feelings, trusted others with their fears, and believed that honesty would create understanding. Then they entered a relationship where every vulnerable sentence was used against them. They tried to describe what hurt them, but their words were twisted. They expressed sadness, but were accused of manipulation. They brought up a problem, but somehow ended the conversation apologizing for causing it. They remembered an event clearly, but were repeatedly told that it never happened that way. This kind of experience can teach the nervous system a brutal lesson. Speaking does not create safety. Speaking creates more pain. After enough conversations where honesty leads to humiliation, blame, or emotional punishment, silence begins to feel protective. The person does not stop talking because they have nothing to say. They stop because they have learned that every sentence creates another opening for attack. Silence becomes armor. Not perfect armor, but the only kind they trust. Even after that unhealthy relationship ends, the response may remain. A caring partner may ask a sincere question, but the body remembers someone who asked similar questions only to collect information that could later be used as a weapon. The present relationship may be safe. The nervous system is still waiting for proof. The third path, internal processing. Not every quiet person is carrying a dramatic emotional wound. Some people simply process information internally. Certain people understand their feelings by speaking. They think out loud. As they talk, the confusion becomes clearer. The conversation itself helps them discover what they believe. Other people work in the opposite direction. They need to understand the emotion before they can describe it. They must separate anger from fear, disappointment from shame, and the current conflict from everything it reminds them of. Only then can they speak clearly. For an internal processor, an intense argument can feel like being forced to solve a complex puzzle while someone is shouting the countdown. There is too much information arriving at once. The other person's words, their tone of voice, facial expressions, old memories, possible consequences, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the fear of being misunderstood again. The brain becomes overloaded. It is like a computer trying to run 100 demanding programs at the same time. The screen freezes not because the computer is empty, but because it is processing too much. For these people, silence can be a loading screen. They need the external noise to stop long enough for their internal thoughts to take shape. Pushing them to answer immediately does not speed up the process. It usually interrupts it. What is really happening inside the silence? From the outside, a silent person may seem detached, but their internal experience can be intensely active. 3 important processes may be unfolding beneath the quiet surface. First, they may be replaying everything. During emotional distress, the mind often returns to the same moment repeatedly. What exactly did that person mean? Was their tone intentional? Did I overreact? Was this my fault? What happens if I say what I truly feel? Will they understand me? Will they leave? A network of brain regions known as the default mode network is involved in internal reflection, memory, self-focused thinking, and imagining possible futures. When someone becomes trapped in emotional rumination, the mind can turn into an endless investigation. Every word is examined. Every facial expression is replayed. Every possible response is tested before it is spoken. The person is not necessarily ignoring the conflict. They may be mentally living through it again and again. The problem is that analysis does not always create clarity. Sometimes it creates a maze. The person keeps searching for the perfect sentence, one that cannot be misunderstood, criticized, or turned against them. But no sentence feels safe enough. so they remain silent. Second, silence may be protecting the relationship. There is a psychological concept often called the window of tolerance, associated with the work of Dr. Dan Siegel. Inside this window, a person can think, listen, communicate, and regulate their emotions effectively. Outside it, they may become overwhelmed, reactive, panicked, numb, or disconnected. Some quiet people recognize the moment they are leaving that window. They feel anger rising. Their thoughts become sharper and more destructive. They know that if they speak immediately, they may not express their pain. They may release it like a weapon. They might say the cruelest thing they can think of simply because they want the other person to feel the same pain. And they know that certain words cannot be taken back. So they remain silent. What looks like rejection may actually be restraint. They are holding the emotional explosion inside because they do not want it to destroy the person standing in front of them. This does not mean all silence is healthy. But sometimes, the pause is an attempt to protect the relationship until the person can speak without causing permanent damage. Third, pressure can deepen the shutdown. This is where many conflicts become trapped in a painful cycle. One person goes quiet because they feel overwhelmed. The other person experiences the silence as rejection. They become anxious and start demanding reassurance. Talk to me. Say something. Why are you ignoring me? We need to solve this right now. The quiet person feels more pressure. Their nervous system interprets that pressure as more danger. They shut down even further. The other person sees them withdrawing and becomes even more desperate. So they follow them, repeat the questions, raise their voice, or block their attempt to leave. Now both people are reacting from fear. One fears abandonment. The other fears emotional invasion. The harder one person chases, the further the other retreats. Eventually, the quiet person may say something just to end the pressure. But it may not be what they truly feel. They might say, "I don't care. Whatever. There's nothing to talk about." Or they may apologize for something they do not understand simply because an apology seems like the fastest exit. The conversation technically ends. The real issue remains untouched. The nervous system is searching for safety. Even when someone appears completely closed off, part of them is still paying attention. They are noticing your tone, your posture, whether you respect their space, whether your patience feels genuine or barely controlled, whether silence leads to understanding or punishment. Their nervous system is collecting information and asking a basic question. Is it safe for me to open up here? This evaluation is not always conscious. They may not be deliberately testing you, but every reaction teaches them something. When their silence is met with insults, mockery, threats, or constant pressure, they learn that vulnerability is dangerous. They may not start another argument. They may simply reveal less the next time, then less after that. Trust does not always disappear in one dramatic moment. Sometimes it erodes quietly, one unfinished conversation at a time, one emotion that never feels safe enough to express, one moment when someone needed understanding and received pressure instead. Eventually, two people can remain physically close while becoming emotionally unreachable. The distance was built without either of them noticing. That is why understanding this pattern matters. The goal is not to excuse endless withdrawal. The goal is to create enough safety for communication to become possible again. How to reach someone who has shut down. When a person is emotionally flooded, complicated communication strategies are usually unnecessary. What they need first is presence without pressure. This does not mean pretending the problem never happened. It does not mean accepting disrespect. And it does not mean waiting forever while every important issue remains unresolved. It means recognizing that a productive conversation cannot happen while someone's nervous system is still in survival mode. Instead of demanding an immediate response, acknowledge what you see. You might say, "I can tell that you're overwhelmed. I'm going to give you some space, but I'm not disappearing. We can talk when you feel more settled, and I'll listen." That sentence does several things at once. It removes the immediate demand. It shows that you are not abandoning them. It confirms that the conversation still matters. And it offers a clear path back to connection. Then follow through. Step away. Do not send 10 messages during the pause. Do not use silence as punishment in return. Do not repeatedly ask whether they are ready every few minutes. Let the nervous system experience what it may rarely have experienced before. Space without abandonment. Silence without consequences. Distance without rejection. As the emotional pressure decreases, access to language and flexible thinking may gradually return. The person may still need time, but when they come back, they are more likely to speak because they feel safe, not because they feel trapped. If you are the person who goes silent, your need for time does not make you cold. It does not automatically mean you are emotionally immature or incapable of caring. You may simply need more time to understand what is happening inside you. But there is an important difference between taking a pause and disappearing. Silence may begin as a shield. If it lasts too long, it can become a wall. The other person cannot see the storm inside you. All they can see is that you have stopped responding. Without any explanation, they may assume you are punishing them, leaving them, or refusing to care. You do not need to explain everything immediately. You only need to create a bridge. Try saying, "I'm overwhelmed, and I can't explain this clearly right now. I need some time to calm down. I'm not leaving the conversation, and I will come back so we can talk." When possible, give a realistic time frame. Could be 20 minutes, an hour, or later that evening. The exact length matters less than returning when you said you would. That small message protects both people. It gives you space to regulate your emotions. It gives the other person reassurance that the relationship has not suddenly disappeared. And it begins turning an automatic defense into a conscious communication skill. During the pause, try not to spend the entire time building a case against the other person. The goal is not to prepare the perfect counterattack. Ask yourself simpler questions. What am I actually feeling? What part of this hurt the most? What do I need the other person to understand? What am I afraid will happen if I say it? When you return, begin with your internal experience rather than an accusation. Instead of, "You never listened to me," try, "When I felt interrupted, I started believing that what I was saying didn't matter. That's when I shut down." The second version gives the other person something they can understand and respond to. It transforms silence into information. When silence becomes unhealthy, not every form of silence is a nervous system shutdown. Sometimes people deliberately stop communicating to control, frighten, or punish someone. A healthy pause includes responsibility. The person communicates that they need space. They show some intention to return. And when they are calmer, they participate in the conversation. Punitive silence works differently. It is used to create anxiety, gain power, or force the other person to surrender. There is no clear return. No reassurance. No effort to repair the relationship. The silence becomes a tool of control. Understanding emotional shutdown should not require you to accept manipulation. Empathy and boundaries can exist at the same time. You can say, "I respect your need for space, but we still need to return to this conversation. I'm willing to wait until we're both calmer, but I'm not willing to leave the issue unresolved indefinitely." That is not pressure. It is a healthy boundary. The goal is not to force someone to speak before they are ready. The goal is to create a relationship where both people's needs matter. One person may need space. The other may need clarity and reassurance. Healthy communication makes room for both. The strength hidden inside quiet people. There is something important that often gets overlooked. People who take time before speaking can develop a powerful relationship with words. They do not always react immediately. They examine what they feel. They question their first impulse. They consider the damage a careless sentence might create. And when they finally speak, their words may carry unusual weight. That does not make every quiet person automatically wise or emotionally healthy. But silence can contain thoughtfulness, restraint, loyalty, and deep emotional awareness. In a world where people often respond before they understand what they are responding to, the ability to pause can be a strength. The challenge is learning how to turn that pause into connection. A quiet person does not need someone who can read their mind. They need someone who will not punish them for needing time. And the person beside them should not be expected to wait forever in confusion. They need reassurance that the silence has an ending. This is where healing begins. Not when one person completely changes their natural way of processing emotion. Not when the other person gives up every need for communication. But when both people learn how to meet in the middle. One learns to give space without abandoning. The other learns to request space without disappearing. That is how silence stops being a battlefield and becomes a bridge. The next time someone becomes quiet during an emotional moment, pause before deciding that they do not care. Their silence may not be the absence of feeling. It may be the result of feeling more than they can express. And if you are the person who shuts down, remember this: needing time is not a failure. But the people who love you still need a sign that you are coming back. Sometimes one honest sentence is enough. I can't talk yet, but I'm not leaving. That sentence can interrupt an old survival pattern, can calm fear on both sides, and it can protect a connection that might otherwise disappear behind a wall of misunderstanding. Real emotional safety is not created by having perfect conversations. It is created when two people can experience difficult emotions without turning against each other. If this story felt familiar, share your experience in the comments, and if this video helped you understand yourself or someone close to you, support it with a like, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe for more conversations about the hidden patterns that shape our emotions and relationships.